Hi everyone, happy holidays, and if they aren't happy, I hope they get better. My name is Keanu Eugene, and I am a writer. I mainly write on Webnovel, and the stats for that website are on screen. My stories are on other websites, but on Webnovel, it's easier to track the stats. I started in 2021, January 21st, and since then I have 20 million views and 5,000 readers. And on Patreon, I have made over 5,000 US dollars within the first 2 years. And I'm almost at 4 years now. So that was just the first 2 years. I started with zero experience and without ever having read another book. So this is from zero to where I am now. So, and I will be telling you everything you need to know, everything I learned, and everything people don't want you to know about becoming a full-time writer in this video. So if you find anything useful, like and subscribe, and hopefully everything else I post on this channel will will be helpful to you, because my goal is to share everything I know for free with proper examples. And the most important part is proper examples, because while I was learning to write, YouTube flooded me with videos that would say things like top 10 tips for writing character arcs, or the secret to writing romance. And all these booktube or author tubers, they would essentially give you 10 or 5 very basic generic tips, and then they would try to sell you their book or their course. And eventually I learned as much as I could from these things and my own research, and I got curious, so I got into one of their courses, or I bought some of their books. Well, I got some of their books, and I realized that they didn't show examples because they couldn't practice what they preach, and their writing didn't match up to the persona they tried to put on YouTube. So they were better YouTubers than writers. They were great YouTubers. They had big audiences, but they weren't that good at writing. And if people knew that, they probably wouldn't get as many book sales, which is fine. It's a hustle, whatever. They have to make their money. But I want to actually help people like me, people who want to do this full time. So this video assumes that you want your writing to be as good as it can get, and you want to live off your books. You don't want to have a second job. You want to only do writing, get paid, and take care of yourself and your family from your books. So I'll be showing you everything for free, and I'll be documenting the process. And everything I've written so far is available on my accounts. My Webnovel account has everything, which is this account, Keanu_Eugene. And when I post anything else, or I write anything specific for the YouTube channel, it will be in my Discord, and everything will be free. So you can always hold me accountable or take your time and break down everything I write. Now, let's get to the actual writing part, the actual journey part. Climbing the ladder to the moon. This is the best analogy I could come up with for the writing experience. Because people who want to be a full-time author, they look at people like J.K. Rowling, and the Sorcerer's Stone was essentially, well, the Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone, it was essentially her first big breakout book. But she wrote 2 books before that, right? So she wasn't like an overnight success first-time author. She wrote a book when she was 6 years old, a small book. And then she wrote her first novella, 25,000 words, I think, when she was 16. So the first Harry Potter book was 26 years of experience. So she had, and it was 13 drafts or 11 drafts. So she wrote it 11 to 13 times and had 26 years of experience writing. So that's a massive word count over 26 years. Right? So that's how she got to the moon. And she never stopped writing. So essentially what you're doing is you're looking out over a field, and you see J.K. Rowling, and she walks up and she jumps. She jumps to the moon. And 100 million people think, they don't see all the effort she put in before. So they think, okay, I can just write a book and jump to the moon too. And they all fall flat on their faces, and then they say it's impossible to do what she did. But it's not impossible, you just have to do all the work. But writers like to hold up their perfect book, and they don't show you the work, they don't show you the thousands and tens of thousands of hours that went into crafting it. So that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to show you my plan to effectively work so hard at it that failure becomes impossible. Because I'm not betting that my book will be good. I'm ensuring it will be good by doing all the work I can beforehand. And if you put 10,000 hours of true diligent work into something, it's more likely going to be good. And even if it's not good, it's definitely going to get above 95% of books. And you will only get better over time. So instead of jumping to the moon, we're going to put a ladder and we're going to climb each rung one by one. And eventually we'll get there. Because they don't show you all the they don't show you the miles she ran up before she jumped to the moon. They just show you the ending when she's on the moon holding the $1 billion from Harry Potter. Right? So let's break down each of these first, and then we'll get to the writing cycle. So experience and timeline. As I just said, J.K. Rowling. She was 32 years old when she sold the first Harry Potter book. 26 years of experience. And Brandon Sanderson, who I think is the greatest living fantasy author of all time. Not the most successful writer of any time, because J.K. Rowling is definitely the most successful ever. But he started at 20 and sold his first book at 28. But the difference is he didn't have 26 years of experience, but he was always reading since he was a kid. And then when he was in college, he did a writing degree. He did a written arts degree. So his school life and his passion for writing overlapped. So he got the double dip. But most people have their regular job and their writing is something they do when they get time at home. So they're splitting all the time. But for him, his work and his hobby were the same thing. Especially because he worked as a security guard at night. So he could sit at his desk all night and write. So he had like the perfect storm of things coming together, and he wrote 13, 12, 13 books before his 14th got sold, right? Which is where I get to the third point here, word count and dedication. Because you can't give up just because you don't have your first book be the bestseller, right? These people kept going over and over. And yes, there are people like Patrick Rothfuss who their first book is a bestseller. It's like it redefines a subgenre. But those people also have background things like him and George R. R. Martin, their background helps their books. George R. R. Martin, who wrote the Game of Thrones series, is a medieval historian. People who like medieval history and the grimdark nature it's been told in love his books. That's how he got famous. He was a mid-lister for decades before Game of Thrones got famous. So your word count matters because the easiest way to track your writing is your word count. So I'm at 1.8 million published words so far. I'm about to hit 2 million, and in the background, things that I haven't uploaded yet would get me over 2 million, but those aren't there yet, so those don't count because only things the audience can give you feedback on will ever count. Because art in a vacuum is worthless. Nobody's there to judge it, nobody's there to appreciate it, nobody's there to give you feedback so that you can improve the next piece. So, your word count and your dedication affect the sliding timeline because people who stick to writing for over 10 years are much more likely to find success. It's like a 1 in 20 chance you become a best-selling author. But if in those 10 years you write 5 million words, which is a lot, I know it's a lot, if in those 10 years you write 5 million words, and most people can't even finish one manuscript, one first draft, in 5 years, that puts you massively ahead of the competition. Because people usually judge authors based on the average. And the average person at most things sucks. And the average person at writing, actually 90% of aspiring writers don't finish a first draft. They barely get past chapter 10. So if you finish a book, it separates you from the people who haven't finished it more than finishing a book and becoming a bestseller. The gap here is a lot bigger than the gap here. So the distance between you and J.K. Rowling, if you finish one book, is closer than the distance between you and someone who has never finished a book. So all you have to do is stick with it and get the words on the paper. And I'm pretty much living proof of this because my timeline for writing was 10 years. And I wasn't going to start my original fantasy novel until year 9 or 10. And now I'm not even at year 4 yet. I'm 1 month from year 4. And I've improved so much that I'm confident that it will work because I underestimated how easy it is to get ahead of most writers. Because when you dedicate the time and you dedicate the word count, it becomes very easy to win. Because these people aren't good at sticking to anything. And the reason for that is not entirely their fault. It's human nature. Writing a book takes time. But I understood this when I began writing, which is why I changed my process. Most people follow the traditional standardized process, but I follow a different one by design so that I can get ahead of them, and it worked. So I'm going to share that with you in a bit here. So, effort, I just went through this. Work ethic and your goals, right? Your goals are the main thing that determines how much effort you need. If your goal is to have a shelf of books with your name on it that supports you and your entire family, that's my goal, then you have to put in a lot of effort. Like a ridiculous amount of effort, especially if you want this within like a reasonable time so you can actually enjoy that money. Right? I want this before I'm 30. I want at least 3 books or 2 books with my name on it printed on a shelf before I'm 30 years old. That actually sell properly. But if your goal is to just have a book and say you wrote it and you don't plan to become a bestseller or live off it, it's just a hobby for you, that's fine. Hobbyists, what the things I'm going to explain will sound very extreme to people doing this as a hobby. My other videos will be great for you because I will still break down every single aspect of writing I know about, and I'll teach you everything I can and everything I know. But this video is all about the grand plan, right? The big plan. So this video is very extreme because it assumes that you will work so hard that success becomes like a guaranteed, that failure becomes impossible. So if your goal is just to write a book to say you wrote a book, it will still take time, but you can go at your own pace because nothing is depending on it. But I'm of the mindset that my future, my kids and my family, mainly my kids, are depending on me to write good books and sell good books. So I'm working at this in an extreme sense. And then there's genre and target audience. This one's pretty simple. Different genres have different barriers of entry, perceived barriers of entry, and baseline requirements and max potential. So the number one genre in history ever and today is romance. Romance has a fairly decent barrier to entry. If you find a good niche in romance, like young adult romance, then you can write. There's a massive spectrum of things people are willing to buy, right? So romance has a lot of subcategories, and some of them want will tolerate lower quality writing than others. But I still think you should always aim for like to have your writing as close to perfect as you can possibly get it. But the baseline requirements for certain genres like romantasy, which is like fairy romance or fairy romance, yeah, like someone going to the fairy realm and get like a fairy husband or queen or whatever. That kind of stuff, they usually have a slightly lower barrier to entry. But that's also why that market is very flooded right now. Like a lot of booktubers, especially writing for romantasy, right? And the maximum potential success for romance is always going to be the highest because humans naturally like romance. Most humans naturally like romance. So you have the largest market, but the market possibility. You have maybe 8 billion people who you can sell your book to. It doesn't get bigger than that. I'm a fantasy sci-fi writer, so I have a much more niche market, much more slim, but they are dedicated. That's the difference. Sci-fi fantasy people are dedicated to sci-fi fantasy. They are willing to buy big books, big 300,000 word books if they know the writer is good. Romance, you need to have a somewhat faster cadence with your books, and you have to have something gripping. But I don't write romance. I have romance subplots, so I will be teaching some things about romance, but it's not my specialty. So you have to just pick your genre and understand the target audience of your genre and what they like. You don't have to chase trends. Do not chase trends. Go with what you want to read and write that, because humans aren't that unique, right? What you want to read isn't so unique that nobody will read it. I promise you that, because I thought that at first. Then I realized, oh, I'm not that special. Other people want to read about someone going into a dungeon and fighting dragons. Who would have thought, right? It's only a whole genre. So the next thing is the numbers people don't tell you. And this might be the most important thing. This might definitely be the most important thing. 90% of aspiring writers and authors fail to complete a first draft. This is true and it is heartbreaking because I'm sure you've met one or two people who, if you're already writing, they say, yeah, I wanted to be a writer once, or they say, yeah, I could totally do that, because they don't know how hard it is, right? And of the remaining 10%, half of them are hobbyists or amateurs. Hobbyists are fine, they can do whatever they want. I don't judge them that much because they're doing this for fun. It's a hobby. They aren't doing this to sell books, they're doing this for themselves. And when someone's doing something for themselves, it's not my place to judge if it's good or bad. It's really only up to them to judge. Amateurs are different because amateurs are people who want to be bestsellers, but they cut corners. They cut corners on either learning to write or editing a book or getting cover art. So if you see a book online and the cover is AI, people look at that and they think, okay, there's a very high chance I open the first page and there's spelling errors and they don't know how to format the book and things are like misaligned. That's what like people mean when they say amateur. And these people are flooding the self-published market. So people think self-published means amateur. But no, lots of like huge successful authors with big industries behind them self-publish because it earns more potential money. You get higher royalties. Amateurs, people who cut corners either on learning to write or publishing the book itself. And then of the top 5%, most people don't market their books properly. So writing the book is one skill, but running it like a business is a totally different skill. So most people will just market themselves. They would send out an email and they would buy some Amazon ads and that's it. There are entire agencies, ad agencies for books. So when I'm at this point in my career, I'll definitely make more videos on that because I want people to see everything from start to finish. So if I go with an agency, I'll give a full breakdown of the agency. If I figure out Amazon ads myself, I'll show exactly how I do that. I'll show my sales, my revenue, everything. And then here, what we talked about, here, this is also very important. Cover art is variable. So depending on your artist, your cover art could cost thousands, it could cost $10. I would always recommend going with a better artist. I'm currently looking at some artists to do some cover art for me for my YouTube channel. But editing can cost you thousands. So this is why I'm not in full screen because I want to show this. This is the cost of editing. A max word length, because 120,000 words is the max length you want your first fantasy book to be as a writer. And editorial assessment, $2,500 tells you which of these you need. But I'm going to get all three of these, so I'm just skipping this, right? And with all three of these put together, I'm looking at around $8,000, $7,000 to $8,000, depending on my word count. And I have to get all of these because this is my first book. So developmental editing will tell me what's wrong with my story. If I can cut a character or add a character, or if I need to stretch or condense a story arc, that kind of things. Copy editing is effectively, this website does copy editing and line editing together. So they spell check and they look for grammar, syntax errors, if I can cut certain words or replace certain words or restructure a sentence to make it shorter. And then proofreading is the final check, spelling errors, those small things. But this is a big part of why people say some people think writing is only for rich white people, and because it kind of is, because spending $8,000 if you don't live in like America or the UK is a lot of money, right? Or in some first world countries, a lot of money. And for me, who lives in Trinidad and Tobago, that's a lot of money. That's so much money. And my challenge is I'm only using the money I make from writing on my writing on YouTube channel. On my writing on my YouTube channel. So I have to make $8,000 from writing alone. No other income. Right? Because if my writing quality isn't good enough to make the money, why even bother with a book? I'm not good enough yet. So that's a nice way of me looking at it. But these are the numbers people don't tell you. It is more likely that if you stay diligent and you do what I did before, right? You put in the effort and you don't cut corners, you become the 1 in 20 people who find success. full time. And if you're living outside of America or the UK or somewhere with a high cost of living, like for example, if you do this and you're living in India or like some part of Africa or Trinidad and Tobago where I am, US dollars US dollars exchange for local currency very well. So the cost of becoming a full time writer and living off your writing is much lower. So if you're looking for something to do and you're in another country where US dollars exchange currency is worth a lot, this is a good path. It is a lot of work, and I will say the opportunity cost is not good because there are many things that are worth a lot more, and that I would honestly recommend over this. Like if you're living in the UK or US, just get a regular job. Get a regular job and stretch this out to be a 10 or 15-year journey, because this is far too risky if you're living in a country where getting a common cold or stubbing your toe could put you into debt. Okay, you need to have cash flow on hand if you're living in those countries. Do not do this if you're in those countries, unless you know you can afford it. And now we're gonna get into the idealized pattern. Now we're getting into the let me go to the next page. Now we're getting into the problem most people run into, and the problem I saw and I avoided very wisely, if I do say so myself. This is the idealized professional path. This is what people say this is what people think when they say I want to be a writer. This is what research will tell you to do, right? So, this in a perfect world, this is what you would do. You would start by doing your research, then you plan your book, you do some writing, review your writing, find the problems, finish your first or second or third draft. Then you would get alpha readers, who ideally are people like literary agents or book editors, right? So you send the book to them, and they will send you feedback to change it. Then you send the book to beta readers, who are your audience or people close to you who you trust, right? The most, your wife, your girlfriend, your family, your siblings, and they give you feedback, and you change your draft again, and then you send to gamma readers, who are the people you expect to like this kind of book. So if you write books about fantasy and dragons and wizards, you send it to people who like dragons and wizards in their books, and then you get feedback from them, and you use that to make your final draft. After your final draft, you get professional editing, which is all of this that I just spoke about. After professional editing, you have two options. You either do querying, which is where you send it to a literary agent, and they will get a big publishing house to buy your book. Publishing houses are the businesses that put books in bookstores. Self-published books don't get into bookstores. Publishing houses are the people who put your books in Barnes and Nobles or whatever your local bookstore is. Those are the guys who get like the big movie deals and stuff easier, right? Those are the guys who give you the big contracts. If you don't get if you don't get a literary agent, or your book doesn't get sold to a publishing house, you have to then purchase your own cover art. Publishing houses don't really let you control the cover art, because they know what the audience likes more than you. Their entire job is knowing how to sell your book. So they will do the cover art. Most of the time you won't even get input. But if you're self-publishing, you tell the artist what to try and you slap it on the book. So your cover art is done, and this is where the paths converge again. Advanced review copies. Most people who self-publish fail at this part, because they think putting the book on Amazon will get reviews. But people don't buy products with 0 reviews. Nobody wants to be the first person to take the chance on it. So you have to send your book ahead of time and send people a link for free. You're allowed to send your book an electronic copy of your book if you're asking for a review. You can't ask for a good or bad review. You just have to say an honest review. So when I write my first book, I'll just put it in Discord or on the YouTube in a YouTube video, and I'll say, here's a free copy, please leave an honest review, and that'll be it, right? But they don't do this, so nobody wants to buy a book with 0 reviews, and then they wonder why they don't sell any copies. It's because nobody trusts your book. So you have to give away some of your book a few times, get some reviews, and then the purchasing will come in. And after that, you fully publish your book, and then you get success. This is the dream, right? that you do this once, your book sells, and you become the next J.K. Rowling. You become the next billionaire author. You become the next Stephen King or Brandon Sanderson, right? But let's go to the reality, because this dream takes a lot of time. A lot of time, yeah. Because writing a book, finishing the first draft, takes the average person who finishes it 2 to 3 years. And by the time they're ready to do the final draft, it's 5 to 6 years. So this is 5 to 6 years, and you don't even know if the book is good. Because most people do this. This is the common amateur part, not hobbyists. Hobbyists can do whatever they want. They're doing this for fun, so they can do whatever they want. We aren't judging them, right? This is how they usually go. Amateurs, doing basic research, planning the book, writing, reviewing your writing, finding some problems, changing it and jumping straight into the drafts. Then you only get beta readers, if they even bother to do that. So they get some people to read the book, tell them what to do. They change the final draft, then they self-edit, which means they don't spend the massive amount of money this is, right? Which is why the book has errors on like the first page, and people immediately leave a bad review. So they self-edit, they cut corners there, and they also cut time with the beta readers and such. And then they go to querying, they get rejected because they self-edited, so of course you're going to get rejected. And querying is its own skill aside from writing. So that's a reason a lot of people get rejected. They don't know how to write a query letter. And I'll practice that when I get to that point. Right? And then they pay for cover art. And they get some cheap cover art, some AI art maybe. Right? And then they publish immediately and they go into despair. Because nobody even wants to touch their book. Because it looks cheap. And when people look at Amazon has a feature that lets you look at the first like 5 pages of a book. And when people look at those first 5 pages and there are errors and it's not spaced properly and the formatting is weird and the font is weird, nobody wants to buy your book because you look like an amateur, right? So, and then people are like, oh my god, writing is so hard. Like, yes, of course it's hard for you. You cut corners everywhere you can and you didn't do enough work. Like, obviously nobody wants to buy your book, right? So ideally you would do this, which would take 5 to 6 years from like the average person. Like Brandon Sanderson wrote 13 books in 8 years, and people consider him a psychopath, right? And I've written just as many words in 4 years, and I promise you, I have no work-life balance. It's Christmas as I'm planning and recording this. Well, it's 2 a.m. the day after Christmas as I'm recording this version of it, after making some edits. But it's Christmas now. Most of my family's at a resort. I can go there. I can be there within like 2 hours. But no, I stayed here to write, to make a YouTube channel, and to make these videos. Because I am a psychopath with no work-life balance. And if you want to succeed in this, in a timely manner, that's what you have to be. And most people can't do that. So, to each their own. But again, this is what the amateurs usually do. And then they complain because they cut corners, right? And this is why some people write like 50 or 60 books in 2 years, because the books are low quality, so of course they can write it fast. And then they cut corners everywhere and they upload 50 books to Amazon and they collect like $2,000 a month. Right? But they'll never be like, how do I say this? They'll never be truly comfortable, because if every month you're collecting $5 from this book and $10 from this book, your books will never have that good of a reach because your audience won't really grow. People won't spread your book through word of mouth, so you'll never grow. You'll always stay flat. People will cycle in and out. They'll try one book, they'll decide it's not for them, and they'll go on to the next one, onto our next person, because that's how Amazon works. It will show people books and people will buy it, but they'll only try one. But if you wrote over like 15 years 6 really good books, the chances are somebody will buy all, because they'll read one, they'll love the quality, and they'll buy the other one. And that's what I'm going for. So it is a way to make money, but that's not a way to do it. And I'm also doing this for legacy. I want my name to be on things that I'm proud of. That's why on my Webnovel account and my Patreon and my YouTube, I use my real name. I don't use a pen name, because why make something you aren't proud of and willing to put your name on, right? So again, don't cut corners. Now the hidden cost of writing. This is the other things people don't tell you about. This is why most people quit before their first draft is done. So the main hidden cost is the mental health cost, because writing is very isolating. You have to spend hours upon hours by yourself writing, and a lot of people don't understand that because they don't see an instant reward in it, so they think you're crazy. Because if somebody goes to work, they know that their friends and family knows that they're getting paid at the end of the week or the month, so it's fine. But if you're writing and you say, yeah, I'm not going to get paid for 5 or 10 years for these hours I'm putting in, they look at you like you're crazy because that payment isn't even guaranteed. And they're right. In most situations they're right. But you want to be the one time that they're wrong, because you want to succeed, so you have to put in even more hours. So it's a vicious cycle of, to prove that they're right, that they're wrong, sorry, you have to look even more crazy. Again, my family's on vacation at a resort. They're loving the holiday vacation. I'm here writing and making YouTube videos and figuring out all this stuff, because it's not healthy for most people, but this is what I love doing. I love teaching people things and I love writing. So it's perfect. So the social isolation and pressure, there's that. Money is also a problem. As I went over editing, cover art, courses. In my opinion, you do not need writing courses. I mean, I didn't use any. I only used free resources and trial and error. But I'll get to my feedback loop, which is what allowed me to bypass all of this. Um, Editing will cost money, but it'll take you maybe years to finish your book. So by that time, you should be able to save dollar by dollar, hopefully. If you live in a different country, I recommend using the method I'm about to tell you, because it lets you make money for your writing from your writing. So you get to make money and improve and build an audience that will probably buy your book when you finish it, all in one go, right? The opportunity cost is very real in writing, because writing is time that you could be working a second job. Writing is time you could be driving Uber. Yeah. Writing is time you could be spending time with your family, your wife, your kids, right? And if it doesn't work out, you wasted all this time. Well, not wasted, but you get no money for all this time if you plan to be a full-time author, and you missed buying that extra gift for your kid. You missed uh, your friend's party. You missed your kids, I don't know, dance rehearsal, whatever kids do, right? You miss out on those things for writing. At least for me, because again, my family's on vacation, I'm here writing. Okay? So I'm not saying what I'm doing is healthy or good. I'm just saying it's what's working for me and the results are great. Time is also a thing, and the most important aspect of this is maker hours versus manager hours, which is something Alex Mosley talks about, right? Maker hours are when you start a project and you don't stop until it's done. So manager hours can start and stop because you have a task and you know what to do. Maker hours for writers or artists is that you sit down and you're going to write a chapter, and it takes you an hour before you type the first word, and then somebody comes and interrupts you after you're like 2 pages in, and the timer resets. That's a very real thing. That's something I deal with, because for me, the time between chapters is longer than writing a chapter. It just takes me an hour to an hour and a half to write and edit a chapter, but it takes me 45 minutes of sitting there staring at the blank screen before I start writing. But as soon as my fingers touch the keyboard, the chapter is over like that. So that's a real thing you have to deal with. So you have to schedule time, or if you're busy, you have to learn to plan books very well, which I'll go over in a future video. So if you're super busy, right? If you're a single mom or dad, what you do is during your lunch break. First of all, your lunch break is now gone, right? So because you're using the block. So during your lunch break, you plan out as much as you can about the book, and then as soon as you get home, as soon as the kids are down, as soon as you have that 20 minutes, that hour, that half hour, you write as much as you can. And what you want to invest your skills in is the planning. You want to study how to plot a book very well, so that you can plot the book, the main story of the book, and the scenes, every scene, so that you don't waste any time. That's the method I use if if I need to get a lot of chapters done, fastest number of time. But yeah, those are the things that you essentially want to focus on. And I already went over opportunity cost. If you live in the UK or America, get a regular job, please, because writing is also so much easier when you don't have to worry about paying your bills. Like it's so much easier. Like I'm in a very privileged position where I have a loving, caring family supporting me. But if you're not, get your life stable before you start to write, because writing is a lot of stress and you don't need stress if your life is already stressful. Okay? So please just do what's good for you. Do what's writing is not a get rich quick scheme. Lots of people want to tell you it's a get rich quick scheme. It's not. It takes a lot of work and it's very um, unstable in terms of what you're writing making money. Now the next thing, my actual plan. Oh, my yeah, let's go over my actual plan and I'll tell you how my plan fixes these things. Right? Yeah. Okay, so my plan part serialization. This is something I didn't know about until I started doing some more, until I looked into it more, right? Because there are a few mediums of writing. There are traditional novels, which are like, if this was a storybook, it would be like a book cover to cover, hard copy. Then there are light novels, which are the same thing, but the stories is much longer and the style of telling is different, right? And then there's web novel, which is the entire thing is online and it's serialized. So they are like 100 or 200 chapters or how many ever, and every day or every other day or every week one's uploaded. And this is what I did, but the way I did it is a bit. I would say it's a cheat code, but it's not. It's a cheat code. Yeah, I basically cheated. I hacked into the system, into the writing system, in order to get like progress at like ridiculous rate, progress of improvement at a ridiculous rate. So the first thing I did some research on what I want to write. I planned the book. I started writing. I reviewed my writing. Right. I found the problems. I self-edited. Then I upload it immediately. You skip the editing. You skip the beta readers. You just upload it like this, right? This is what Webnovel does. You just upload because you write here. You write them here on Inkstone. Wow, after login. You write it here on Inkstone, then you press this button in the corner and it lets you upload immediately. Right? And the reason you do this is to do the ones in red here. Collecting feedback and using feedback. Because people comment on every chapter. So you collect the feedback from one chapter or one volume or one arc or whatever it is, or one scene. You use the feedback and then you go back to writing. And when I say use the feedback, I mean you use it to actively improve your writing. So if you do this like I did for 250 chapters, within 1 year, your writing becomes very good in 1 year. And it only gets better with every single chapter. So my first story was 250 chapters, and I'm currently on, and I wrote a 90 chapter story between that one and this one, and my current story is 352 chapters. And every chapter gives me feedback, and I improve every single chapter. So compare that to spending 5 years writing an 80,000 word book, and then 5 people reading it and telling you what's wrong, and then you sell it. You put it on Amazon and then 2 people buy it and tell you your book sucks and they don't give you any feedback. How are you expected to improve from that? Serialization is perfect if you want a constant feedback loop. The feedback loop is what you care about, because the faster you get feedback, the faster you can implement it, the faster you can improve. So this is a feedback loop. That's why it doesn't have an end. The end is when I stop writing the book, is when the book ends. But this has a clear end and you only get feedback. This has a clear end and you only get feedback. What? Here, this is the only time you get feedback, and some in the professional editing phase. And a lot of the feedback comes from after you get people reading your book, which isn't a guarantee. and make your second book better. But if you sell your first book and your first book sucks, like if the first Harry Potter book was terrible, she wouldn't have made a second book. Her career would have like been stunted for the next 10 years until her next book. So serialization is the way forward, right? But to get serialization, you need an audience, right? I just went over this feedback loop and the disadvantages and advantages. And serialization also fixes these things: the mental health, the isolation, constant stress, the anxiety, being overwhelmed. You don't have to focus on everything in a book all at once, and you have people interacting with you. You have comments. I have a Discord. I have a Patreon. People are talking to me all the time about my book and about writing, right? And you get to see progress. So if your parents or if your partner is pressuring you and telling you nobody's reading your book, you can show them people are actually reading your book and you're getting better and you're building an audience for when you're selling your original book. And then in terms of money, I have a Patreon. My book will pay for itself. Like, I have a Patreon. Granted, I didn't make a Patreon until almost 2 years in, because I don't feel comfortable starting a Patreon when my writing isn't at good enough quality. So within 3 months, people was asking me to start a Patreon, but I waited until my first book was done because I wanted to show people that I actually finished the books I start. Because serialization has this very bad stigma that most people don't finish their books, and it's well earned because most people don't finish their books because, again, most people suck. That's all. So if you can finish one book, it sets you apart so much more. You're in like the top 0.001% of serialized writers online. Like, it's that good. So I didn't start a Patreon until I finished that book. So yes, serialization, the path, right? And then these are the building blocks that you have to focus on. It's a lot, but this is another advantage of serialization, right? Especially how I do it, and it's a lot. And I will be showing you everything you need to know on this YouTube channel. But if you want to get into exactly how I do it, you can either do it fully original serialization, which I will show you how to do, but it's much faster. Like, I would not have gotten 12 years of progress into 4 years if I didn't go with fanfiction. And I know like half the viewers just left, and they left a dislike and dropped a hate comment and unsubscribed. Please just stay subscribed, okay? But I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers by next year, Christmas, 2025, Christmas. But yeah, the the cons of fanfiction are the societal perception, right? You aren't writing an original book. People might make fun of you. Might be ashamed to say it. Honestly, the only thing that matters is your bank account, to me at least, and that people like my writing, so my readers and my money are all that matters. So I don't really care. And the second con is you cannot copyright a fanfiction. So I write currently a MHA fanfiction, right? And you can't paywall monetization it. So you can have it on Patreon, but your Patreon has to explicitly say they are not paying for the story or the content. They are donating, and you happen to post things that you are working on, which means everything I post from this story on Patreon will eventually be free. So nothing is paywalled. They're just paying for like behind the scenes stuff. They're paying for me, not for the story. So there's no copyright problems. But granted, unless you're making like $1 billion from your fanfiction, it the lawyer fees alone makes it impossible to sue you because it isn't profitable to sue you. $100 million company isn't gonna sue some kid on the internet writing about Harry Potter and Hermione or whatever, right? Nobody cares. That's the first thing I have to understand. Nobody cares. Just write whatever you want. But the pros are so amazing, and this is why I did this. Because the pros are you have a built-in audience. So people are there ready to give you feedback because they love the story that you're writing in, right? So they have passion for it. So if you do anything wrong, if you fail to keep characterization constant, they will tell you. You have training reels, you have world building, characters, plot, magic system, romance, you have everything. And you can figure out which one of these you're worst at and start on that first. So if you're writing a Harry Potter and you're terrible at writing magic, right? You can keep everything else the same and have your character, or have Harry learn new spells and you come up with new spells and your audience and you ask your audience, does this spell feel like it fits into the Harry Potter world? If you're writing about Star Wars, you can have your character be a Jedi or a Sith and you keep everything the same. But if you want to practice world building, you invent new planets and send them on new adventures, right? So you can mix and match which of the building blocks you have to do. But if you're writing an original story, you have to do all of them at once in every chapter. So that's how I did it first. At first, I practiced plot and world building and magic systems and romance. I I thought I was doing characters right, but I didn't do the main character right. So in every single arc and volume, I would switch out what I was doing and build and build and build. So by the end of the first story, I had a holistic foundation to write from. And that's what the next one was about, a temporary specialization. So in one volume you're a romance writer, in the next one you're a professional world builder, in the next one you're all about the action and the fight scenes, right? So you can do that, and it's easy to build a community. It makes writing so much less lonely, because without my community, without you lovely people who subscribe and are watching, without my Discord, without my Patreon, without my Webnovel readers and my Scribble Hub readers, like, it would be so much less fun. It would be depressing. Part of the reason it's so difficult to write exclusively for Patreon is that they don't comment that much compared to like Webnovel. So it feels like I'm writing for no audience. But if I was writing an original story in my basement for 5 years in the dark and nobody was ever seeing it, I would be super depressed. Which is why writing takes a toll on your mental health, because you have no community. All you would have is like your girlfriend, your wife, maybe your parents, your kids. But they aren't like, they aren't 100 people reading your story. And again, allows more experimentation. This is very important because you want to experiment a lot to find your writing style. So I have sections of my first book that are horror, some are comedy, and so on. And documenting your progress is easy. So you always have a reference point. Like, for example, when I'm teaching certain things, I'm going to reference back to my stories, because I know exactly which chapter has certain writing techniques. I know which chapter is written like a horror. I know which chapter has the framing to make this character look funny. I know which chapter is good to show off dialogue. And also, it's a potential first draft. So if you don't know, 50 Shades of Grey was a Twilight fanfiction. Yeah, and there is a Harry Potter, a not a Harry Potter. There is a Star Wars fanfiction that is pretty popular in the romantasy genre, which is like, I think Kylo Ren is like in the Feywild, he's like a fairy or something, and some girl falls through there, right? And he's like an evil fairy or something like that. So it's very possible for you to file off the serial numbers and just swap some things around, and it's your first draft. I won't be doing that, I think, because I want my audience to also read it, and I don't want them to be like they've read this before. So, but it's very possible. So again, the pros and cons are there, and the pros are so much better. But you have to take this seriously. You have to treat this as if you actually want to become a professional author within 5 or 10 years, right? And I promise you, I will show you everything. So my next videos will be how to decide what you're gonna write in, how to decide what you're gonna focus on, how to plot the book, and eventually I'll show you how to set up a Patreon, how I value my Patreon, how I approach writing for it, everything. And if you have any questions, you can join the Discord and I'll show you, and I'll answer there too. But now to the next slide. Where to start and what's required. So these are what I just went through, right? But this is the most important one here. Learning and doing the absolute basics until they become muscle memory. This is the best part of serialization, because it gets you used to writing. And part of the most difficult thing of being a writer is that every writer has a different voice, in quotes, voice, right? Which means everyone has a different style. But if you're writing high volume, your style becomes clear much sooner. You don't have to write your third book or your fifth draft in order to find your style. You find your style super early, before your first book, before your first story probably ends. So I found my style within the first 100 chapters. So that's like 200,000 words, which is like 2 books or 2 drafts, right? And the sooner you find your style, the sooner you can lean into it. And believe me, when you lean into your style, writing flows so much better. And you will also curate your audience, because people who don't like your style will leave, and people who like it will stay in your book. So you get more valuable members because you get your target audience for your original books. And then the end game for this channel, right? For this channel, for this entire project. The end game. Keep writing and improving publicly while working on my original story in the background. I will be showing some parts of my original story, not too much, because I want people to reading it for the first time from the channel to ideally, if some subscribers buy it, to experience a full story, a full new story. But everything else I'm reading, doing all the fanfics, they will be full. I will stream them, and as I'm writing and plotting and everything, like you'll see everything. You get to ask questions. So this is a full spoiler channel, right? I will share everything I know about learning for free. So 0 courses, 0 paywall. The Patreon will only be for like advanced chapters, right? But that's its own thing. But I want everyone to become a better writer, because I honestly, selfishly, I want more things to read that are good, and the market's being flooded with mediocre garbage right now, and I want good stories, so I need everyone to just become better. And then long term, save 68K US dollars for professional editing and potential cover art. I do have to pay for some YouTube cover art and a banner, but for now I'll probably just use a picture of me, right? I mean, it's me, it's fine. My name is already on it, so I don't really care. And then later on, I will traditionally or self-publish my original book. Ideally, I traditionally publish it, but I'm fine with self-publishing, right? Because I'm confident like some people will buy my book. It's very standard. It's boy is becoming dragon, right? Instead of boy finds dragon, boy becomes dragon, right? So yeah, that's the entire gist of it. I've showed off hopefully enough. I've gotten this entire presentation will be available in Discord for free. It's in my Discord. My Discord is right here, and it is right here. Oh, you can't see it. Hold on. I'm still used to this. Still getting used to this YouTube thing. Yeah, it is right here in Discord, in the YouTube channel. It's also pinned, so you can also find it here. But yes, that is the entire plan. You now have a good framework. You now know you can hold me accountable. All my links will be in the description or in a comment. YouTube is making it very difficult for me to put links in the description. They have to verify me or something. But as soon as I can, everything will be in the description. But for now, I will show a link right here. I will just show a link. This is the link. Right? Copy. Done. Right. Okay. Like and subscribe if you like this video, if you think this is useful, if you believe in me and me showing you everything I know about writing, if you like my numbers. And I'll see you in the next video, where we should be either plotting or planning a book. Right? I'll see you next time. Happy holidays.